Hi, Scott. Good to speak with you again.
You too, David.
Thank
Great,
you.
great to see you.
And we had a chat a few weeks ago, and I've also spoken with a few more people in your group in the Cork area. It seems
Yeah,
a really lively place, so you're lucky to be in that group. That's fantastic.
yeah, 100%, 100%. It's
So yeah, but it would be really good if you can just share the sequence of things in terms of your life experience and also what led to realization and the way things are now.
yeah, definitely. So, like David, for me, I just fixed the computer. Um, I'll start with something that stuck out for me at a very young age, and even through all the life sequences, this event, I didn't understand it at the time, but I understand it clearly now, and I'll get to that. I was in a buggy, so I couldn't have been any more than 2, 3, or 4 years of age, and I was being pushed through town, and all of a sudden, I wasn't a child. It's like I stepped out of being a child in a buggy, and I was just aware of my mother and my grandmother pushing me in the buggy and having a conversation, and I was just aware of everything going on. And that's been with me my entire life. I just never understood it, but I remember clearly. And I was also aware of the baby in the buggy. So I never really understood that experience, but that's the earliest kind of childhood memory I have.
Yeah.
I don't really have much after that, only for, I came from a good background. I was reared by 2 women, my grandmother and my mother.
Yeah.
And I had a brother and a sister, Paul and Laura. There was no father, and I know who my father is and stuff like that, but it was just, he's Scottish.
Yes.
And their own personal things, it didn't work out, and there was no father in my life.
Yes.
So I was the youngest. I got most of the attention at home. I kind of most of the love, and they probably felt I needed it because the father was gone and stuff like that, and I always felt through my childhood that I loved being loved.
Sure.
I loved nurture, and I loved being with people. And I love dogs. That's another thing stands out for me, is like once I started hitting 6 and 7 and 8, even though I had plenty of friends, I used to love my own company.
Yes.
I was just playing in my room on my own. And if I remember my first dog, Prince, and like I'd speak to the dog.
Yeah.
What's going on, and it's like nobody else understands me, and
yes,
he understands me, and there was a shared being or something, And I suppose I was like, looking back now, I was feeling the effects of like lack of love, because like there was no father around, and I'd be in school, and kids are getting collected by their father, and I used to pretend that I had a dad, and it's all these kind of things, like. And the area that I come from, even though the home was good, there's a lot of alcoholism around, and the community is rough.
Yeah.
And my mother and them done the best to keep me away from this. I was a swimmer first. And I swam for Ireland. I was national champion. I like umpteen titles, and I loved it. But as I progressed in age, my anger and violent outbursts and stuff like that at a young age,
Yeah.
And I always felt this separation, and that even though the swimming was great, it gave me this illusion that I need to be someone special to deserve love,
right,
and appreciation and stuff like this,
Yeah.
So my whole thing then was just built around this, like, I'm not good enough, and I always must accomplish, and I got into these things of like self-sabotaging, and I'd be, if I'm really that good, I should be able to win without even training. So I wouldn't train hard, and I do this, and what happened as well when I was young is like, actually when I was growing up, there was my mother, her mother, and her mother up until I was 10 in the one house. So that was my first experience of loss, because I can't remember the loss of my father leaving, and he didn't leave. I don't like to use them words, but was my grandmother passing away. I was about 9. My great grandmother, sorry, and it left a huge effect on me. And you know, we had a lot of tragedy in our family throughout the years, even since that. So I got accustomed to this thing that life is about losing.
Right.
And you know, and I was bottled up this pain.
Mm.
And for me, David, as well, you know, I came from an area where it doesn't matter how good you are at sport and how smart you are in school. It's the toughest man and the hardest man around is what to look up to.
Yeah.
So I was coming into a loving family, and then I started to disconnect from the love because I didn't feel it was a tough man thing to do.
Mm.
And I actually, by nature, was actually quite afraid. And I actually got sick of being afraid. Like I'd go out and something would happen on the street, and I'd back off and I'd be afraid, and then I'd go home and I'd be angry with myself for being afraid. And I kind of spiraled, and I was just be saying, oh, when I get older and when I'm able and when I'm, you know, and then that was backed by the sense of lack, abandonment, rage, and, you know, it kind of started to develop. And then when I hit about 14, like, I was very big for my age, you know, and I started having like vicious, violent outbursts, and like my mother and that couldn't control me. I was starting, I left school, you know, well, I was asked to leave school, and I was just kind of getting out of control. But I still had the sport, and then I found Thai boxing through my brother.
Yes.
So he was really good, and what happened with me is I was really good, really young. And I learned that I could handle myself. And, you know, I was mixing it in a ring with men, and I was only 15 and 16.
Right.
But this created like this super ego in me of like, then I was coming from fear, lack of love, and all these things to now thinking like that, like I'd be protected and I'm going to be a Superman, do you know?
Yeah.
And I don't need anyone. And I was always trying to fill the void of not needing a father. And like, you know, I was always trying to fill something. And it sounds a paradox, like, and a lot of my story will. On the back of that, I always felt like that there was good there and that I was destined for something.
Yes.
I just didn't know what it was. So first I thought it was swimming, then I was in Thai boxing, and I was completely obsessed. And then you see I started drinking, and drink never suited me from day one. So I became very violent in drink. I started losing friends. I started getting very wild. And my drinking behavior and my sober behavior started like nearly becoming the same. And I just started like, I'd go out and I'd be causing trouble, David, and I was hurting my family and I was hurting myself, but I'd keep doing it. And I couldn't stop. And the Thai boxing fell away and all sport was gone. I know it was just becoming about an image and a reputation and this lack of love and this lack of self-confidence. But on the outside, it was like I didn't need love. I'm confident. I didn't care. You know, it was on a mask.
Yeah.
And you know, I could be out on the streets and everyone thinks I'm tough. And then I could be in home that night, like, and I'm crying like on my own. And I don't know why, and I don't know what void I'm trying to fill and stuff like that, you know. And that then led to that escalated, you know. And even though, like, you know, Ireland, we come from the Catholic Church and stuff like that. And what kept me going is I always felt that there was a presence that was watching me.
Yeah.
Even when I lost all faith in everything. And at one stage, like, I actually convinced myself that I was a bad person, that there's just bad people in the world. I'm one of them. And then I owned that persona, you know? And when I was out with my friends, I always loved to be the one to come to rescue them. You know, someone's in trouble, I'll be the one, like, and you know, it reinforces your self-worth and stuff like this, you know?
Yeah.
That all just kind of led to me, like, you know, sorry, before I move on, in that time, I lost a lot of family, as in like cousins. Both of us were 19, and he passed away, and we were great friends. And like another friend belonged to me died, and a few cousins died, and then aunts and uncles, and you know, everyone. It just all adding up to this loss, you know, and this lack of trust in anyone, and nobody really knows me. And then like it started getting dark, and my family don't even know me, and you know, it was really dark stuff, David. You know, and look, by grace, at the time, I ended up. I was 21 years of age, and I got a prison sentence. And I got a prison sentence, and for the next just over 2.5, nearly 3 years, I was in prison. But when I was in prison, a mate of mine, so I was moved from one prison to another because I got into trouble in there as well, and stuff like that, you know. And he brought it to my attention, you know. He was 10 years older than me, and he was the local hardman, you know, like he was me 10 years older.
Right. Yes.
And he was like, you know, like before he was in prison, he had the flashy things. Everyone was afraid of him and respected him. Like the respect was out of fear.
Yeah.
You know, he was big, he was strong, he was, you know, all these things. Like, but he was different. And I met him, and this was 12 months into the prison sentence, and he wasn't in trouble. He was going to a school. He was getting educated. You know, and I felt at that time in my life, I was at a crossroads. And like this happened. And then he said, like, ask me what way I am in drink and stuff like that. And he suggested that he's going to Alcoholics Anonymous in prison. I was 22 at the time. I go, do you know?
Sure.
I sat down and I remember I just after speaking, I can't remember what I said. I just seen a space and people were opening up. But it was my first introduction that there's another way, and introduction to spirituality. Because look, the 12-step programs in Alcoholics Anonymous and all that, it's based on spirituality. It's a spiritual program.
Yes.
And I started finding a new way in that, and kind of, I suppose, relief. And you know, all the emotions were coming up for me for what I've done through the years. And next thing, he handed me just a book on meditation and CDs. So I started trying to meditate, and I was getting relief. And I met a man, Nicholas Cruz, and he was a boxing coach. He worked in the prison, and he was teaching yoga as well. He's Cuban. And I started going to him, and I'd go up to the class just to speak, because he'd be speaking about this different way of life. I felt good in his presence.
Yeah.
He was teaching me about meditation, and then I had an experience in my prison cell, and it was all like the flashing lights and this, and it was a meditation experience, and then I was hooked. More meditation, and reading books. But like, even though that was all kind of mental and conceptual, it was still resonating somewhere, David. You know?
Yes.
There was something there. And I became obsessed. That's my nature. I just become obsessed.
Committed. Yeah. It's amazing though, the way, you know, you were reviewing things very early on, really, and you know, you're still a young fella, and the fact that you can just be so open about everything is great. You know, just to talk about everything in such an open way, that's really nice.
Yeah. And so I was doing the yoga, and I get up every morning, I do yoga, and then I meditate, and then the same in the evening, and started like going back to the school and getting education and just speaking. His name is Timmy. He actually have a podcast. It's the Two Norries podcast, Timmy Long. And it's about all this stuff and mental health and stuff. But it was the first time I spoke to a man as a man without trying to be someone else.
Sure.
You know?
Yes.
And like, it stands out to me, like, even though it's in the realm of like being human and personhood, it's still a huge turning point in my life, because he allowed me to be vulnerable because he was vulnerable.
Yes.
He was the local hard man who was allowing himself to be open and soft and loving towards me, even though he didn't have that for himself at the time.
Wow.
And that allowed me to do the same.
Yeah.
Do you know? So like that, like, I'm forever grateful for that moment. And you know, if things continued like that, it would have been brilliant, but it didn't. I had more pain to go through. And I suppose while I was in prison, the one fear I had was that my grandmother would pass away before I got out. And 9 months before I got out, she did.
Wow.
Do you know? But again, it tore me apart. But I was after just having this information that there's a new way and that I don't have to be violent and stuff like this to process it.
Yeah.
And the following September, you know, I got out, and the first week I drank, and I nearly ended up back in prison after 1 week. And, you know, I was just lucky to escape. So I went back to AA, and that lasted about 8.5 months. And, you know, there was things then going on in my life, and I was playing the blame game. I'm doing all the right things. I'm going to AA and this and that. It doesn't work. My life is still the same, and these things are happening. And, you know, and then I went back at it, drinking and you know, using substances, and really harming myself, like, you know. You know, through all that pain, and like I caused a lot of pain to my family and my mother, and you know, but it was me, like, to myself, I was doing it as well, you know. I was tearing myself apart, trying to find fulfillment, like, you know, whether it being a good thing or a bad thing. It was like I thought that it would fill me. So I went back Thai boxing, and I became obsessed, David. So like I was back drinking, I was Thai boxing, then the drinking stopped. I was obsessed, but then I was back drinking, and my auntie died during that period. I broke out again, and I was gone. I was gone from home. They couldn't put up with it more because I wasn't just a drinker. You know, I was a violent drinker, so it's not like I come in and go to sleep. I could come in and I could be loud. I could be bringing trouble to the door, you know. So I was staying in B&Bs and my friends' couches. I had 1 or 2 nights where I just slept on the road. Now that happened a few times when I was drunk, but there was a few times I slept on the road because I actually had nowhere else to go, like, you know. So for a few months I was staying in my friend's my friend's house 3 days a week while his daughter was with his mother, and then the other 3 days I just had to find other people's houses to stay. And like, what kept me going at that time was, right, I didn't want to stop drinking, and I didn't want to stop the chaos, and I was willing to die, David. I was like, I don't care if I die, but my mentality was like, I'm going to bring so many people with me at the time, you know, like, because I was in chaos, you know, with like-minded people, I suppose. And I suppose what kept me going from taking, and there was a few attempts at my own life when I was under the influence, but what kept me going, it's mad, like, looking back, was the fact that I had that stuff going on, that I was saying, if I kill myself, they'll think it was because I was weak. Do you know?
Yes.
But that's what kept me going, like, and I didn't want to think that they caused me to do it.
Yes.
So my mother handed me a leaflet, like, to go to a treatment center, and I was under the look at me. What are you about? You know? But it was I came to it like that thing did. My whole family, like, out of love, they weren't talking to me. No one, like, extended family, I was too troublesome to take in. My life was up in flames, and it just, the thing sparked on the 1st of May 2016. Like, I just knew I was broken, but that thing kept me going. Like, I'll show them. Do you know what? That's what first got me to stop. And I started going back to meetings for myself.
Yeah.
And I rang the treatment center for myself. And like, I got into that treatment center, and it was just a month. And I came out, like, and you know, I haven't touched a drink or a drug since. But that then led me on to, like, AA. Well, I know I was in AA. What I mean is really doing the steps of AA, and to work the program and meditation and stuff again and things like that.
Yeah.
But what happened over the next couple of years, the first 2 years into it were brilliant. So I was off drink, I was off drugs, I wasn't fighting with people, I had a job, I had a relationship, but I wasn't satisfied. Like there was still a void, you know. There was still like, or there was an understanding through my own experiences that what happened with my mother and my father, you know, all these things were being dealt with, and I was doing counselling, and I had a fantastic counsellor because he have a great sense of just, it's not what's said, it's what's being shared energetically in the room.
Yes.
And there was healing in that. And I done all these things, and I was still saying, like, you know, I'm coming into AA, and there's fellas in here, and like they're here 20 years, and they're still saying, like, it doesn't sound like freedom to me, like, do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know, like sometimes I was just saying, like, he's better off if he just has a drink, because he's and I didn't want to end up like that. And
Yeah.
I suppose the spiritual program of AA is profound, but the spiritual part of it is often overlooked.
Yes.
They're like, you know, I'm off drinking the drink, but I don't know about the God stuff. And I listen, it's like, why are you here? So like, but anyway, like what I got from that was like, I was going to 3 meetings a day. My head was demented. I didn't have a release of drink or drugs. My whole mental thing was caught up in Thai boxing, and that like I had to make up for all the years I lost to prison and drink. So I was trying to overdo everything. I was constantly training. I was burnt out. And then I'd be getting ready to go in for a fight, David. Full of confidence, training done. And I had great ability. And right before I go in, my head will go, you don't deserve this. All the bad things you've done to people, all the terror, all the pain you've caused your family. And I'm like, and then I just numb with fear and what, like, you know, so, and I used to go into the ring, and sometimes even in sparring and in the ring, and I'd allow myself to be punished.
Wow.
That I deserved it. And there was a time in my life where I couldn't wait to be punch drunk, because I thought it would numb the pain I was going through and I wouldn't experience it. And I started having, they were my thoughts at 16, that I couldn't wait to be older and punch drunk. You know, I just wanted to be numb from life and from pain. But at the same time, I just wanted to be loved and love.
Sure.
You know? So that led to, I was doing it's called Cran Tool. We were doing a walk where we climbed a mountain for my buddy's uncle who died by suicide. And I met Timmy again, who was my sponsor, but I was away from him for a few months. And he introduced me to Joe Dispenza's work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And within the first week, I was looking at the stuff and I meditated. And there was just a complete release going on, because it's a different meditation, and stuff came up for me, and it was just a knowing. I just knew that I was after finding something, that everything's about to change again. And it was like bringing up, I suppose, what was happening in AA is like, you're still the bondage of the past, and it's over and over and over and over again. And then like with Joe Dispenza, I was learning, like, when you bring it up, you see it for what it is. You see you are not that. That's not you. And then it's gone. And then it's just wisdom.
Yes.
And I was starting to learn this, and I was starting to get released. I was able to tell my mother I loved her, something I had a thing, you know, and I was just releasing all this kind of stuff doing the meditations. And there was a lot energetically going on. I'd be shaking, convulsions shaking. I'd be on the floor, and energetic stuff happening, and outbursts of just tears and love. And then I was going into AA, and like, I'll always be forever grateful for AA. If someone comes to me in the morning, David, and they have a drink problem, I will bring them there. Yeah. But for me and my story, I was going in, and the story was being replayed, and I was like, do you know what? Intuitively, I knew AA served its purpose for me. And it wasn't anything like that can happen, and it's your mind telling you, and next thing you relapse. But it was, I knew that I was on a different path. And I buried myself. I can remember being in town with the lads, walking around like town, and all that was on my head is I couldn't wait to get home to read more of Joe Dispenza's book and meditate. You know?
When you're out on the town.
And but it was all still happening for the person, right? And it was great, and I was doing that, and you know, I was working, and things were happening, and but I still had this void was still going. You know, you get experiences, and I think you're on the path and it's leading somewhere. And then like I was looking at the yogis and the gurus and you know, these fascinating stories, and then like, you know, you'd see a video of a yogi and he's 150 years old, and or he's now going to go into samadhi, and you know, like, and it was all very entertaining, and you think like you get there, you know, and I was wrapped up in that, like I was like, and I always had this feeling like, and I check in with the lads, I had some experience last night, I was about to pop, it's going to happen anytime now, I'm just going to pop, and that carried on for a couple of years, like, and reactions, like my life experiences, no, it was still all me. It was still me, and it was revolved around me, and I was getting somewhere, and eventually something will happen. Now, that was all relevant as well, David, because what I was doing helped other lads in the area that would have been the same background as me, seeing I was doing well, and they started doing what I was doing. So it had its...
Yeah, it was beneficial for them. Yeah. Great.
You know? And kind of what happened then was that you spoke to Paul the other day.
Yes.
So I met Paul for something different. It was something different when a group of us met up. And I was talking to him, and I'd start talking about Joe Dispenza, and he started talking about Eckhart Tolle, and I was after reading The Power now. And he goes, we talk a bit about that now. So then I started knowing Paul was into this stuff as well, because at the time there was only about 3, maybe 4 of us that I'd speak to about this, and I couldn't speak to anyone else.
Yes.
Because, like, you'll be locked up.
Yeah.
So then, like, we really, you know, it was the change. And again, that when I first read The Power Now, was brilliant, but I was on that part of I wanted the experience. I wanted the big change and the big bang. And Joe Dispenza, who was absolutely fantastic, and he's probably the most sought after person in terms of transformation and healing in the body and the physical and stuff like that, and mystical experience. And he's doing great work. But, you know, I was feeling like this is an empty road again. And then The Power Now was all about no, and the simplicity, and who's the voice in the head, and you are not the voice in the head, and who's the thinker. And you know, I was really, and Paul does seminars, and at the time he was doing 2 a week, and I just started going, and I was going twice a week. I started to bring my mother and my sister, and they were getting relief, and it was just, I'd hear the same thing every week, and I'd speak about it, but it was an energetic thing why I was going.
Yes.
You know, and what kind of happened from there then is, like, I led from there to Ramana Maharshi, and then I had got David Godwin's book, Be As You Are, about Ramana Maharshi. And in the meantime, I'd be watching all the videos, and Nisargadatta Maharaj and all these fellas. And I get the book because I love reading, and I was an avid reader. And it was so direct. Like, I would have read it like a couple of years prior, but I wasn't ready. And it was so direct, and I was like, fuck. And you know, I could feel shifts energetically happening, but they were still happening to me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was just like video and more videos, and I get someone with a clearer. No, looking at it, I was looking for the clearest pointer.
Sure.
I get the clearest pointer, and someone will say something. I have to go to Moji and sit in Satsang for a week. It has to be, you know. And, you know, I was up in a seminar once, and we were doing a meditation. The meditation ended. I couldn't move. I just couldn't move. And, like, everything was just happening. And I came home, and I was out the back, and everything was just, it was just a profound sense of peace, an experience of peace. And, like, the next day it was still there. And I was sitting down with my dog, and it was lashing raining, and I was there for about 20 minutes, but it didn't matter. And I started having very in-depth experiences like that. I suppose that were just kind of affirming to me I'm on the right track. Yeah. And I was becoming very aware of the voice, and the subtle kind of voice. Yes. You know, the coming in the back door, like, and I was really putting this stuff to practice all the time, and still doing meditation, but a lot of self-inquiry. But I still felt the need that I'd get somewhere. eventually, and I'll hear enlightenment is here now, and then yeah, that sounds nice, but when am I going to get it? Like, and then even fall into understanding it intellectually that yeah, it's here now, there's nowhere to get, and fully accepting that it is here now, there's nowhere to get, but still waiting for a realization, you know. And I suppose like, and it came to me like when I was out walking, so you'd have even Romana Maher, she would say like, just sit with the self and notice thoughts coming and going, emotions coming and going, and just sit with your own being, and all will be revealed. And I completely get it. And then I'm still there, you're still anticipating for something to be revealed. So like that, I become just aware of slight things. And you know, we done 1 or 2 retreats, and again, and you see, I try to be very clear, because to some people, it, like, I can sound like I'm disregarding stuff, but I'm not, because meditation had a profound, and all these retreats and things have a profound difference on my experience.
Yeah.
But it still won't make me any clearer on who and what it is that's experiencing this.
Yes.
And then I was down in Blackpool, and I was in a bookstore. Actually, I went in a bookstore, it was like a games kind of thing. And next thing I seen The Greatest Secret. All right, like secret, like, you know, it's probably like, you know. And I like, because I'm into books, like it would have been like Rupert Spira, Watching Yourself on the telly, you know, direct stuff.
Yes.
And I was like, and I walked away, and something kept pulling me back. 3 times I went back, and I was with my partner Jane, like, and I said to her, "You might like this book." And then I opened it, and I read 2 pages, and it was like Rupert Spira and Francis Lucille, and it was all about awareness. And I said, right, I'll get it. And like, actually, to touch off that before I carry on, because I was mentioning Jen, like, and my partner Jen and my 2 boys, when I hit the Joe Dispenza work, and I started really getting kind of knuckled down with this stuff, they really like helped all this, because, you know, the love you kind of not feeling in yourself, well, the love I had for them, like, even though like my behavior could have been still all over the place, there was still a motivation to do and be better. You know, and it's still that to this day, you know, and especially now when there's no me, that you can actually just love them, like, you know, and you know, that is another beautiful thing. And I was opening the book, and I was like, this is all about awareness, and I was loving the book. But what that is, I just love how it lines up. What happened there was, she mentioned this fella, Sailor Bob Adamson, and she mentioned about his stuff. So I would have got your name, David Bingham, that she was on the phone with you, and she realized her true nature over a consultation on the phone. And I was like, it stood out to me. So I watched a video belong to you on Conscious TV, and then I watched Sailor Bob. But on the Sailor Bob video I watched, he was sitting down with John Wheeler.
Yes.
And it was more like, Sailor Bob was brilliant, but John Wheeler stood out to me.
Yeah, it's a great one, isn't it?
Like, he just chop you down, like, you know,
sure.
Spiritual stuff. But what about, and he's just like, he just chop it down, you know. And I sat on the couch that night in the chair I'm in now, and I knew intuitively everything else I was doing, I do not need to do anymore. It's just my very being here and now. I had an intuitive feeling that, like, this is about to end. I didn't know what was about to end, but that's the only way I can explain it. So I was listening to all John's stuff, and I was like, geez, it was just like blowing me away. Like, but I wasn't sharing it with any, like, usually before when I find something, I share it with someone straight away.
Sure.
This was very, like, I just didn't feel a need to do anything. And then, like, again, then I went back to the book, and I was listening to yourself, and how you were laying down listening to Alan Taylor and John Wheeler, and you realized your true nature, and like, and then I seen that, like, you were available to take calls, and again, this comes to me like, it's just, I was lying in bed, and just from here it comes up, email David Bingham, and I just go with that. I just, you know, I don't question it. I just emailed, and you know, we got a call sorted, and I just knew when I jumped on the call like that this was this. I tried to go into it without any expectation, but I was getting nervous, you know. And the way that the call went, like, I would have watched your videos with other people. It's completely different when it's direct, the way we're speaking now.
Yeah, it's energetic, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. And it's your specific doubts and questions
that are addressed. Yeah,
exactly. You know, and I just remember like I was just completely focused, and I was taking everything, like, and it was just like, I mean, I'd say that I watched the call once or twice, and it was like, there wasn't, like, besides a couple of bits, there was nothing drastic that was like that I've never heard before.
Sure.
But the one part that stood out to me was like we done the exercise part, and we went through that, and I just clearly remember saying, but David, when I close my eyes and I see thoughts coming and going and emotions coming and going, and everything's still, and everything, it still feels like this presence, that there's a me. And I remember just asking, like, I think that it's that me has to fall away, or is that another trap? And then you just pointed out, like, but that me is not Scott, like, that me is infinite awareness, and it was just,
that was it.
It was just, nothing happened and everything happened.
Yes, that's the way it is. Yeah,
you know.
fantastic.
And the shift, it's a shift. I laughed for 2 days, you know.
Yeah.
And that would have happened to me before, like actually doing the John Wheeler things, like non-conceptual awareness, and I'd laugh, and I didn't know where laughing was coming from, and now, like, it was just a divine cosmic joke on myself, you know, their self.
Sure.
And I just was laughing uncontrollably. But I suppose this is very interesting. What I'm going to touch off next, David, is like, nothing mattered, like, nothing was mattering, like, and I'm in a group that I do every Tuesday, and I started about a year ago, and I was like, thoughts that were coming up were like, how am I going to do? I don't even believe in half the stuff that I've been doing the last year. And I was like, and I remember doing my first meeting, and I was like, I don't know what to say, because it was so completely obvious that nobody, like, it's great the way it has been unfolding. I was like, nobody needs to heal.
No,
but nothing needs to be done. You are already that, you know.
Yes.
Like, my and I said that the first night. I said, I have no intention here with this meeting. It just is what it is. But if I had one, it would be that you get what I'm trying to say, and that the meeting is over, and no one needs to come back.
Yes.
You know, it's like, and then, like, this, like, going into the story, and people are like, you know, affirmations, and they have their place, because it can get you out of a dark place when you're consumed in your head, and you're depressed, and telling yourself you are enough. And like, I'm not condemning these methods, they have their place.
Yes.
But when I'm talking about, like, realizing who and what you are at the core, none of that matters.
No.
Meditate, like, I didn't meditate since, except for when I do my group, and I met up with the lads for a meditation. And I remember someone else was guiding the meditation, and they went into a guidance, and everyone had their eyes closed, and I'm just like this. It's just, I like, there's no, I was just already there. There was no push to meditate to get anywhere.
To go. No.
You know, and they were like this, I'm able to just subscribe to the body of bliss.
Yeah.
It just, you know, and I'd be just beaming. And I suppose where and I always find it's good to be brutally honest. And so for me, like, the doubts that would have been coming up then is like, this happened, like, Holy, that didn't happen to you. You didn't go into no great big void and stuff like that. Like, but it was like the first 2 days that was completely seen and like laughed at. Yeah. Then, like, you're 2 or 3 weeks later, it's like you're giving it a bit of attention.
Yes.
You're giving it a bit of attention. And like, it's different. It's processed different through every person. So like, I was able to self-confirm everything I've ever read, everything like Rupert Spira, yourself, John Wheeler, anything that was ever said, even the stuff I didn't understand. I was like, I knew exactly
Yes.
what it meant.
Fantastic, yeah.
And I also knew, David, that anger still arises, frustration arises. The person and the story is still at play.
Yeah.
There's no player.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yeah.
And then like, you know, and that's what was difficult for me then going back around my own group and stuff is like, you know, but it's been just open and listening with compassion at the same time. But there was also like the progressiveness that they're speaking about. And then I'm kind of coming in saying, but hang on a second, it's actually right here now. Oh, you know, there's actually no progression, like, you know, it's like I realized that the spiritual path is actually a roundabout.
Yeah.
And you know, that's not saying anything wrong with it, because like, you know, being on a spiritual path is definitely better than being on a criminal path.
Sure.
But there's still a need.
Yes.
Both of them.
Yeah.
And now, like, you know, I know just like the word spiritual, like being peaceful, being all this, like it's another concept that you can take up.
Yeah.
So like thoughts still come and go, like thinking still happens. I love thinking about things. You know?
Yeah.
Working things out.
Yeah.
It's just like being alert, as you said to me as well at the moment, with the personal side to it. You know, the part like where I could be sitting there like, and it can only happen once, and the talk went to my head and I went, Scott, and then, you know, Scott who, like, you know, and so then the thing was coming like about oneness, right? So like it can happen, David, for me, like the way it's been unfolding is like you can confuse yourself still if you want.
Yes.
Like what happens is the concept will come up of something you heard before.
Yes.
And you'll hear a fella talking about how I was walking down the road and everything was just seemed to be such and such. And then you can go off on one and that, like.
Yeah.
Well, what was happening to me profoundly, and I'm not going to say that it was that it's a constant state, because and I know why, and I'll explain that now. I was walking down the road now a few times and I just look and like there is no separation.
No. So
I can separate myself physically, right? That I'm here and that's over there. But when all that is dropped and I'm just, there's no seer, there's no seeing, there's just the seeing.
Yes.
And energetically, even though the tree is over there, like I'm looking out my window, physically, yes, there seems like I'm here and that's there. But when I'm not subscribing to the mind, and energetically,
yeah,
I just feel the tree. I can feel that I am it.
Yes.
There's no separation energetically, and it's just a knowing.
That's unity, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, the only time that doesn't feel like that I is when I'm up here.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's optional, isn't it, Scott? You know, the mind's still available, but it's, as you say, there isn't a constant state. It's just the clarity of knowing that there is only unity, but then we can remain there, or we have the option to utilize the mind as well. But once there's the seeing through of one's own identification with individuality, then you can't ever go back.
No.
So
no.
But it's possible to, some people engage the mind, and there can still be mind predominance even with realization, because as you say, it's almost optional, but I find being able to function from effortless being, as you were saying, I think your whole process has been really intuitive, and it's It's funny the thing you were saying about the roundabout, because the experience you had as a little boy when you were in the buggy with your mum and your grandmother, and the clarity there, where you just saw that everything was arising in awareness, including the body mind of the little boy called Scott. And then you go back to realization, but it was almost, well, it was totally complete then, really, wasn't it, when you were about 2 or 3?
Yeah, yeah. and like, I suppose the thing, I'm just sticking in the charger, the sense of individuality, I can see how I confuse myself, like. So, and the way you put it, like, it has been profound even for me speaking with others. Like, it's just a case of mistaken identity.
Yes.
You know. And so I suppose for most, when you close your eyes and you feel, you know, you can mistake it for a sense of individual.
Yes.
And I was like thinking that sense must collapse.
Yes.
But what collapsed was the sense that it was an individual. It's just the sense of presence.
Yes.
And I mistakenly took the sense of presence for an individual called Scott.
Yes.
Whereas, like, if you just stay with the sense of presence and add nothing else.
Yes, that's it.
You know,
and it's impersonal, isn't it? I think that's one of the biggest ways, you know, to kind of see through it, because it's the distinction between the personal and the impersonal. It's the personal that's the disguise, when it's always actually remained impersonal. And but yeah, as you say, what's overlooked in a way is that awareness and presence and that state of existence has no boundaries in it. So even with the eyes closed, you can't find any boundaries there. And so the fact that it's this impersonal field, it becomes pretty obvious. And once it's been seen, you can't go back to thinking it was you as an individual.
And that's, you know, I've played with it like a few weeks after, like, you know, I so, like, and again, nothing wrong, like, you know, with any of this, but, you know, in some, I suppose, like, telling yourself a different story and you're going to set these goals and accomplish them. And I'm like, whatever about all that, that's brilliant. But I to play, like, to see this, I tried to do it, and I was the effort and the and that's just for me, like, and this is a huge thing, and I like to get back to this, the sense of freedom after we spoke, David, of knowing intuitively that the seeking is over.
Yes.
And that if anything did try to pick back up residual stuff, I know that all I have to do is I'm here, and I can I suppose what I got from John Wheeler as well is, like, hold it up. That whatever concept that is against your true nature and seeking it exists, you know. And that's what I've been doing with anything that came up. But the sense of utter freedom, of knowing that what I am and what I'm not, and never having to attend a meeting, a seminar, read a book, listen to anything, unless I actually just want to, because I still do that out of enjoyment. I'm not looking for anything.
Certainly. Yes.
You know, and if anything, I still listen to yourself, I listen to John, because it also, I suppose, because I do a group of a Tuesday, helps me find maybe other words that I can put to the table. Because again, if I go, I've seen this now, I know it all. Like, you're back in the game. You know, I'm just completely open to whatever kind of arises, and I go intuitively with stuff. And I suppose that's something that I kind of wanted to ask, was that when I've been speaking to a few people, I feel like that I have this, again, intuitive, from the way they're wording stuff.
Yes.
Where they're caught.
Yeah.
Or some people, like, would be talking to me and they're telling me how clear they are with this, but I intuitively know that they're not clear. And, like, I suppose then I'm coming back to, there's a small bit of doubt, because it's not my direct, like, I'm not in their body. I suppose I'm going off that intuition. Am I being correct? You know what I mean? Which, like, I haven't been kind of wrong yet, I suppose, but you know.
Yeah, you can only kind of deal with those situations moment to moment. Really, there isn't really there isn't a a sort of approach we can take. It's just the intuitive one, really. Just that each person you meet, you have to look at differently. But it's really interesting the way your life story. It's been similar to many people where there's realization, which is that it's almost as though your life experience has been so extreme as it's tried to distract you from realizing your true nature. Like everything was thrown at you on every level to try to divert you from realizing your true nature, but none of that was ever going to work, really. But it's I think you're a natural teacher, and that's that's something. I guess what I found is that if there's if you meet someone and it isn't totally clear where they are, my approach is that with effortless being is neutral, so it never needs to be defensive, and it never needs to take a position on anything. If we take a position and say, oh, it's this way and this is the only way it is, then we're into the mind then. So the opportunity to assist people with realization always comes from your infinite nature, because it's when you're fully present that there can be the sharing of the single being that we all are. And so I just feel, and well, I think it's what you were just saying, which is that the kind of simplicity of just letting things be sometimes is enough, not not trying to put it in a particular way. I mean, some teachers do that, and you just have to let that be as well, really.
Yeah. And that's good you say that, because again, sometimes I might say something and I might be coming across that I'm against, but I'm not against.
No.
For me, I suppose, like seeing that, and again, this is for me, seeing this through these eyes, and knowing without zero doubt that everyone is just a pairing, it's just one. So this which is experiencing life through Scott is the exact same that's experiencing life through David,
Yes,
and
exactly, yeah.
when I knew that without doubt, and then I see the hierarchy of spirituality, I suppose it just makes me very, I suppose I'm very, the way I do things, I make sure it never gets like that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Like the first thing I say at every meeting is I am not a teacher.
Yes.
I'm here to, like, there might be a teaching come out, but
yes.
we're all just, I like Ram Dass's thing, I'd say we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, sure.
And which it is. And I suppose like that, I just kind of got blown away by like this wanting the teacher and this person has it, and like, but then on the flip side of that, it's like, I love having these conversations, and I love speaking to you again. And I'm actually speaking to Richard Sylvester next week.
Oh, great! Yeah.
And I'm not seeking anything. I just have this intuitive thing. I want to speak about this stuff with other people who are clear.
Yes.
And like, there's no judgment of are you subtly seeking, and this kind of stuff. And it's I love that. Like, and I suppose I love that first listening to John Wheeler made that clear to me, because like he showed up, he done his few years of teaching and disappeared.
Yes.
And it's like fucking brilliant. Like he wasn't looking for anything out of it, and there's nothing wrong with whatever comes out of it either. But I mean, there was no false promise.
No.
And I started clinging on to that, like to the like, stick with me, and eventually you the bright lights.
Yes, certainly, yeah.
And like, I suppose it's being open that this is for everyone.
Yeah.
This is for everyone, and you have and like I just swear, David, like my heart is on fire, it's just, and again, it's the same as when you're experiencing unity, like consciousness, you know, it's just love. It is just complete and utter love, you know, for everyone and anything. And I do feel blessed as well here, like that. There's a good understanding of, I can have a clear understanding of what I am and what everyone is, and that everything is love and unity. But I can still understand that in the play of the game,
yes,
if someone is an asshole, they're being an asshole, and you don't have to like passively accept and go into judgment. You know, whatever's happening is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And action can be taken from there and then. Whereas if you're like, I'm on a spiritual path, I'm not I'm not going to get angry, you're cutting the game.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a comedy. Yeah, that's fantastic, Scott. But yeah, you certainly had you know, a very intense experience, really. But it's funny, in India, the caste which is responsible for maintaining spiritual knowledge is the warrior caste, the Kshatriyas, and I think you're one of those.
Brilliant.
So yeah, but the sequence you mentioned, it's really fascinating just to, you know, to hear how that unfolded. But it was pretty dramatic at times, wasn't it? It was amazing, really.
Yeah, and you know, I like it doesn't like, a lot of people are kind of caught up in their story, and I know a story has like, it's good, like, and I speak about my story if applicable, but
yes,
but I know, like, I have no attachment. There's no attachment there. No attachment there, David. And sometimes it's like, who was I in my past life? I get this, like, who was I in my past life, and about reincarnation, and I'm like, you can't even handle the life you have now, and you want to go all your own life. You know what? Who cares, like? And it's time for a topic of conversation, but I suppose when I'm trying to get down to the nuts and bolts of this stuff, you know, I think them things are better investigated and played with when you're when you're pretty sure about what you have.
Definitely.
You know, because you can get caught up again in the game
in the content.
You're off on one, like. And now, like, I heard all these things, like, and even you would said it, like, it's like you could get a glimpse of this, and then because you heard it through someone else, all right, now I must learn how to stabilize in it, and when I stabilize, I get the deeper understanding. You're straight back in it, like.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the last little cul-de-sacs for most people, really.
Yeah, it's profound, and like the sequence there now, like in my life, like it's like knowing what I was, full of love, and then the lack of love, and thinking love had no home for me.
Yes.
Then I found peace through violence, and then like found a sense of self in that, and then all these characters crumbled, like.
Yes.
Crumbled, like, you know, and for me, like, no, it's just clear, like, that depression, ecstasy, like, if I'm training and your hair training, you're smiling, you're crying, the knower of all those things never changes, like. It's just blank. So like, I remember the other day, like, I was on an exercise bike, and like, so the body was sweating, it's moving hard, you're out of breath, everything's going, but there's this part that is just completely blank,
totally still,
and it's just registering all this, and then the only thing is that we call that me.
It's wild. That's fantastic, Scott. I really appreciate you. And also the clarity, and because you looked at so many different people, but as I quite often say, it seems as though we're seeking, when we're researching all these things, but actually we're on a training course. It's as though we're kind of being trained so that when we have the opportunity to share this knowledge, you can relate to most people because you've looked at most things that are available.
Yeah, I have, and
Yeah.
maybe it's in the Buddhism. Maybe Rumi's poems have it. All right, Ramana Maharshi. Maybe Neem Karoli Baba. I think he was with Ram Dass.
Yes.
I was caught up in that for a while. Beautiful stories, but then I was like, he's going to start appearing to me now. Oh yeah, that's the part I left out in my story. Actually, sorry, and it's actually, I think it'd be good for people that would listen to this.
Certainly.
I also tried the psychedelics side, like, you know.
Oh yes.
And DMT. So that was a huge thing. No, all right, like where after I done DMT, I was questioning, like, we do not know anything. But the thing when I smoked DMT was like, it was like a sense of separation, and all this stuff was dissolving, and this big fear, and hands came up around me and just said, surrender. And it's all images, and it's all like you're getting these messages, and you know what, like some of the stuff that was, I suppose, said kind of manifested. But it was a real sense of feeling at home. But that led me off on one.
Yeah.
That, like, I done more DMT about 20 or 30 times, and it's a transcendental state, and when you die, you go to this place, and angels and this and that, and like all that now is completely understood. That's just another realm that we can experience, and stuff like that. But there still has to be a presence to experience it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like none of that is there unless you're there to experience it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you know? And that's just like, I'm after clearly seeing that now, and it's just that you brought it up. I've tried every avenue. Like I got up. I heard about meditation, and at 3 or 4 in the morning, you're more susceptible. It can open up the pineal gland.
Yes.
Set my alarm, I get up, I do it. Like, it's just like, but I think that's a good thing to have that.
Yeah, definitely.
Have that, like, you know, no surrender. That like, even though it's always here, and it's a complete comedy when you realize it. Yeah. Or if you don't have that want. You know, like I used to meditate, and there were stages of meditation where intense fear would come up, David. Like, and I was ready to die. If it meant that I had to die to have enlightenment, yes, I was ready to die. Yes, you know. And now I know that there's no such thing as enlightenment or death. You have to have it. Yeah, we all have it. You know, whichever way you want to put it. And everything just is. Yeah, you know what I mean. And it's just love, like it is just love. And I heard all these things before, and you know, for anyone that would watch this, like my thing will be, from my own experience, that whatever you hear, whatever pointers you hear, believe none of them. Yes. Find out for yourself, and that's what I say to people every week as well. Believe nothing that I say. Don't take it for granted. Yeah. Listen to the pointer, see where it's pointing to. And then you find out for yourself. Yeah. And trust your own inner knowing above whatever anyone else is saying. Yeah. But the consistent thing for you, though, right the way through, has been commitment. You know, whatever you've done, you've just been totally committed to it. So that's I think that's a really good thing for people to know, because, you know, some spiritual teachers say, oh, there's nothing you can do, you know, you just have to wait for it to happen. But my feeling is that commitment and, you know, being determined really, you know, can make a huge difference. Yeah. And I know there's been people with spontaneous realizations and more so not, and it's from listening to your interviews and stuff that I'm realizing that. But apart from that, like, the only two people like, I suppose globally that would have happened to was Eckhart Tolle and Ramana Maharshi. Yes. Like everyone else, like, even though like it I suppose it doesn't have an effect, but maybe indirectly has an effect. You know, most people are on a path, like, you know, most people are searching for years, and there is a commitment and a determination. Yes. But it's just, again, you can fall into the trap of thinking you have to have 20 or 30 years. Yeah. This. And then when you see it for yourself, you're like, no, like, always mean. But you said to me on our call, like, if it was completely spontaneous, I wouldn't have a story to tell, David. No, you wouldn't. No. you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you know, there's no to help the next person realize, like, you know, and
Yes.
stuff like that, you know. So
Yeah.
actually, as I said, I'll read out that poem if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
It was from the as I was explaining, it was so after our call, about a couple of weeks into it, I was sitting on the bed and I could clearly see, like, you know, who I took myself to be, the character I played. And it was like, not visually, but unknowingly seeing the sequence, and that I've always been there through it. And I just wrote it. I just wrote it out, you know. So it's a letter from the impersonal me to the personal me. And I just call it from, in capital letters, I just call it from me to me. So I read it out. I've seen you crawl, I've seen you cry, I've watched you crumble and also fly high. I've silently watched as you went through life, yearning for love, seeking for joy just as you tasted when you were a little boy. I was with you every step of the way. I saw you cry, I saw you bleed, in that desperation to find what it was you thought you need. My boy, I seen you tear your family apart, only for it to break your own heart. I watched you delight in every passion you had, so determined to prove you never needed a dad. I held you tight through the mayhem that came, violence and chaos that brought so much shame. I watched you sit in your physical hell while you pondered away in your prison cell. I saw you become a monster outside, masking the wanting of love left behind. I watched you come good and take on a spiritual path, only to find it had its own nasty rat. I held you while you faced your fears, righting the wrongs you did through the years. I watched you weep as you couldn't sleep, from all the pain as you started going insane. But never ever have I left your side, as I held you in my heart through the entire ride. My boy, I watched you every day, if only you stopped and heard the silence of what I had to say. I was there with you when it seemed the end was near, and all of a sudden it began to become clear. The love in your heart began to swell when you finally realized you were no longer in hell. All those years you never did think that all could be revealed in the speed of a wink. My boy, wasn't it such a freedom to see that all along you were me? The pain, the suffering, and all the illusion ended in one drastic conclusion. You were I, and I were you. There was never an answer, but always a clue that what you sought was always you. The character you chose to play was never destined to ever stay, as you were always meant to be, free, at one, at peace with me. My love from beginning was unconditional, allowing the play to run its course, until my boy came home to his original source. A cosmic dance between I and I, a love bound together, never to die.
That's wonderful, Scott.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I kind of put
Incredible.
everything we just spoke about, I kind of just kind of wrapped it up in.
Just came up. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. I'll have to get that trademark now.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just it's a combination of innocence with you and also the worldliness, you know, and I think it has been quite a dance, really. But yeah, it's wonderful. And yeah, you know, I just think that lots of people you know, will be coming to you and, you know, possibly speaking one-to-one with them. You know, you're doing the groups at the moment, but you'll have your own feeling. You'll be guided on that as to which way to go and, you know, how to share this knowledge.
I got that as you bring it up. In the group setting, when you're teaching people about tools, let's say tools, to practice presence, let's say.
Yeah.
And pay attention to the body, the Eckhart Tolle stuff, which is brilliant. And
yes.
And, you know, becoming aware of space and teaching meditation and the practical things that you can do are profoundly helpful, and especially in a group.
Yes.
What I do find is that direct inquiry about what you truly are is difficult in a group.
Yes.
Yeah. I find one-to-one, having a cup of coffee with someone, it's very just, you know, direct. Yeah.
Well, I think you've already discovered the ways to kind of identify the little blind spots that people have, because they're usually just one or two little ones, and you become more familiar with them, and they're easier detect. So that's going to be yeah, it'd be great, the way that's going to happen. But you're so lucky. Cork, I think, is one of the strongest spiritual communities on the planet. You know, you and Paul and the people there, it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift.
Yeah, there is. There is.
And you know, I do love those things and speaking about those things, and it's happening. And then at the same time, I'm like, there's a huge shift and it's happening, and I don't get caught. I just don't get caught up, and it's like, yeah,
it is. It's a paradox, isn't it? Because you can see there are amazing things changing, but the way we deal with them is effortlessly. We can't really take an initiative. We just have to be available, really. So, but that's brilliant. Thanks so much